the Prosper Portland Budget Committee for the purpose of approving the fiscal year 22-23 budget.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry, we don't have a quorum quite yet.
We don't have a quorum?
I don't see Commissioner Hardesty.
Okay, so we have me, we have Commissioner Maps. We don't have a third commissioner?
Not yet.
All right, we'll hold off until we get a third commissioner.
Thank you.
A quorum.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. I'm now convening the Prosper Portland Budget Committee for the purpose of approving the fiscal year 2022-23 budget. The Prosper Portland budget was provided to the public and members of the Budget Committee members on Friday, May 6th. Megan, please call the roll.
Brian. Hardesty.
Here.
Maps.
Here.
Rubio. Wheeler.
Here, we have one item on today's agenda, item 388. Please read that item.
City Council to convene as Prosper Portland Budget Committee to approve the FY 2022-23 budget.
In just a moment, we'll hear an overview of the Prosper Portland budget presented by Executive Director Kimberly Branham. But before handing it over, there's a correction that's needed on the title to this item. Today, we're receiving the Prosper budget, and next week we'll vote on the Prosper budget. I move to correct the title of item 388 to read as follows. City Council to convene as the Prosper Portland Budget Committee to receive the Prosper Portland fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget and to hold a hearing on the proposed budget. Can I get a second, please?
Second, Mayor.
Commissioner Hardesty seconds. Any further discussion? Please call the roll, Megan.
Ryan. Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio. Wheeler.
Aye. The name change is now official. Prior to reviewing the 2022-23 budget in the year ahead, let's acknowledge the crucial role Prosper Portland has continued to play in supporting the city and its residents, especially over the past 2+ years of the pandemic and associated economic and social upheaval. I want to commend and thank Chair Cruz and the entire board, Executive Director Branham, and the entire Prosper Portland team for your continued leadership in creating and implementing new grant programs to assist Portland's most vulnerable small businesses, many of which are owned by BIPOC community members, while also continuing to perform the essential real estate development and economic development work on behalf of the city. As we turn our attention to the 2022-23 budget, it's clear that we must provide the resources necessary to ensure the Prosper Portland team can continue to lead on an array of critical initiatives and projects that support the city's goals for economic stability and growth. Prosper Portland staff are already playing a very important role in the disbursement of the Federal American Relief Plan funds, ARPA funds, and they will continue to administer the City Council supported small business repair grant collaborate with an array of public, private, nonprofit partners on initiatives to support our central city as well as neighborhood business districts all across the city. And they will manage its existing portfolio of projects and programs focused on building an equitable community. Despite the ongoing challenges, I'm very optimistic about Portland's future, and I'm hearing that from a lot of other folks as well. There's no need to reiterate that this has really been a challenging time. We know it's not over yet, but I am eager for us to begin in earnest to implement this critical work with and for the people of Portland. Chair Cruz and Executive Director Branham, will now turn it over to you and your team. Welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm Tavo Cruz, the Chair of the Prosper Portland Board of Commissioners, and we're pleased to be here this afternoon to present the fiscal year 2022-23 proposed budget for your consideration. Prosper Portland's proposed budget recognizes the need to address lingering challenges brought on by the pandemic and embraces equitable growth as our guiding principle for economic recovery. On behalf of the board, I offer our thanks to the many community partners and staff involved in the preparation of our budget, who spent considerable time drafting this budget and putting forth priorities for the general fund, cannabis, ARPA, and TIF funding. We also very much appreciate the key investments within City Council's approved budget that will help us address critical small business technical assistance and financial needs, support workforce development priorities, and catalyze economic recovery from our city's easternmost main streets to Old Town. Thank you for your ongoing partnership and for your leadership at this critical moment in our city's history. I believe the budget that you voted to approve yesterday will benefit many of our residents, local businesses, and communities, both in the coming year and for many years to come. And now I'll hand the presentation over to Executive Director Kimberly Branham.
Thank you, Chair Cruz. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Kimberly Branham. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Executive Director of Prosper Portland, and I'm joined in this presentation by my colleagues, Lisa Abwaf and Shay Flaherty-Bettine. We really appreciate the opportunity to provide an overview of the budget and to discuss our proposed budget in alignment with Council's approved budget with you. So I'm going to give just a quick overview of that budget, talk about some key outcomes and our strategic priorities, and then I'm going to hand it over to Lisa and Shay, who will share a little bit about how those priorities show up in the programs and the projects that they will lead with their teams in the year ahead. Tony, if you want to pull up the slide deck, you can go to the second slide. Great. Thanks, Tony. If you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. All right. Great. Okay. Oops. Back one, please. Thanks. All right. Here we are. At a high level of the $352 million in available resources in this coming fiscal year, we anticipate up to $157 million in total expenditures. You'll see that 81% of these resources come from existing cash balances in TIF districts and new tax increment financing resources that will be issued in the fiscal year, with the remaining 19% of resources from earned revenue, federal grants, cannabis tax funds, $1.3 million in ongoing and in one-time in one-time resources from General Fund, Cannabis Fund, and ARPA rounds 1 and 2 that are within Council's approved budget. To support this work, we will employ 93 FTE and LTE with the size of our 3 external facing departments noted below. Next slide, please. We reviewed the draft budget with our Community Budget Committee, which met 6 times over the course of the budget cycle and whose members listed here represent a diverse array of geographies, industry sectors, and community stakeholders. Staff also reviewed specific tax increment finance district requested budgets with 7 community and neighborhood organizations to receive input. You'll see the full letter from our Community Budget Committee included in your packet, but there are just a couple examples of feedback that I'll share with you. So there was a lot of support for maintaining current service levels for the Neighborhood Prosperity Network and Old Town District managers, enthusiasm for the increased investments to support Black, Indigenous, people of color owned businesses, and a real encouragement for Prosper to make sure that we are increasing awareness of these and other financial resources within community. We heard a strong support for small business stabilization grants and enthusiasm for alignment across what otherwise feels siloed to support activations across the city. And we heard a continued support for the investment priorities articulated in geographically specific action plans across our tax increment finance districts, as well as a real interest in opportunities for Prosper Portland to help stabilize assets and businesses in Old Town in the coming years. The full letter for, next slide, please, Tony. Prosper Portland's strategic plan's overarching goal is to build a thriving, equitable economy, one that provides access to high quality employment, creates equitable opportunities for entrepreneurship, and fosters healthy, inclusive neighborhoods across our city. Our fiscal year 22-23 proposed budget and council approved budget supports interventions and investments to address today's pressing challenges as we work towards an inclusive economic recovery and future resilience. Next slide, please. So looking back to fiscal year 2021, which is the most recent fiscal year for which we have complete annual data from our investments, we see evidence both of economic strain alongside impactful investments. With 1,250 jobs created, retained, or placed through our economic development activities, that's about half as much as the previous year. We also saw a slight reduction in workforce development participants in the fiscal year 2021, with 1,900 adults and youth served through workforce development programs. We are seeing those trends improve in the last 3 to 6 months, however. In line with service levels in previous years, the Inclusive Business Resource Network served more than 1,100 businesses, of which 27% of the owners identify as Black, 10% identify as Indigenous, 27% identify as Latina, and 12% identify as Asian American. We also saw increased participation levels with 24% of construction project investment contracted through certified firms. That exceeds our 20% goal, and most importantly, 22% went directly to minority business enterprise, women business enterprises, or disadvantaged business enterprises. Through the local small business repair grant program and prosperity investment program grants, we served more than 200 businesses, more than half of which are BIPOC owned businesses needing immediate repairs or seeking to improve their space. And finally, we supported diverse local businesses through events like My People's Market and our Portland Means Progress intentional purchasing program, which led to nearly $150 million of local spend by our private partners. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Lisa Abloff.
Thanks, Kimberly. Next slide, please. So we wanted to start a little bit in the fall bump. Prosper received a certain amount of resources to help fund an analysis of corridors and central city subdistricts that are shown here on a map. There's a map being shown on the slide that highlights the various corridors that we took a look at throughout the city, as well as the central city, and then we divided that up into subdistricts. And we undertook that analysis for 2 reasons. One, we wanted it to help inform our budget priorities that we're sharing a bit more about today, as well as to help inform our longer term inclusive economic development strategy that you'll hear Shay talk through in a bit. And so we collected data on corridors from St. John's to Killingsworth, along middle ring corridors like Foster and 42nd Avenue, as well as outer east corridors from 122nd to Rosewood. And Eco Northwest undertook this analysis, and they provided information and have taken a look at key data sets that we're showing on this slide regarding employment change, vacancy rates, and commercial lease rates. That's both across office and retail. And then they went back to 2008 through to 2019 just to really understand both the recovery coming out of the last recession, as well as the direct impact of the pandemic. And the data has helped underpin and will continue to do so how we think about our programs that are being funded with federal ARPA dollars and one-time resources, as well as our longer-term work plans. Next slide, please. This next slide then takes the data that Eco Northwest has gathered, and it starts to group that data into 4 typologies for various sub-districts and corridors within the city. And those 4 typologies are based on cross-referencing the market conditions within those districts or those areas prior to the pandemic, together with the level of impact that the pandemic has had on the areas. The districts in green and pink saw strong employment and commercial growth pre-pandemic, places like North Northeast, Inner North Northeast, South Waterfront, the Pearl, Halsey-Weidler, Central East Side, etc. But those in pink, places like downtown, Central East Side, Lloyd, Park Rose, saw significant decline in employment or lease rates and a significant increase in vacancy through the pandemic. While those in green, like the Pearl District, South Waterfront, or Halsey-Weidler, didn't necessarily see that level of impact by the pandemic. Districts in gold and purple had weaker employment and commercial growth rates pre-pandemic, places like Old Town, the university around PSU, Outer Division, Rosewood, and along Barber Boulevard. And while those in gold were more resilient through the pandemic, those in purple saw even additional challenges going through the pandemic. And as I stated, this helps inform where there are key corridors and sub-districts where we really need to look to invest our pandemic relief dollars relative to longer stabilization. Next slide, please. So with that, just as kind of context setting for how we thought about the proposals that we brought forward for council's consideration, et cetera, Shay and I were going to walk through what our budget priorities are for the coming fiscal year by our strategic plan areas. So goal 1 of our strategic plan is healthy complete neighborhoods. And today we wanted to highlight some of the major items, some of the major investment activities that we're going to be undertaking over the coming year, from tax increment financing through to city general funds through to federal ARPA funds. Goal 1 of our strategic plan focuses on equitable development and really helps guide our tax increment finance resources. A significant part of those resources are further committed through long-term community priorities and are identified in 4 community action plans in North, Northeast, Old Town, Gateway, and Lentz. Each of those action plans memorializes multi-years of investment. If you imagine the investment strategy in community and working with community, they set forth specific goals and outcomes that reflect those communities' priorities, from business vitality and neighborhood investment in Old Town to fostering economic prosperity amongst African Americans in North Northeast. The second category that we wanted to speak to a little bit today about informing our TIF investments is around catalytic sites and investments within each district. This is really looking at particular projects that are key and critical to the community, projects like Williams and Russell in North Northeast, where we're partnering with the Williams and Russell CDC, through to the workshop blocks in the inner side of the Central East Side Industrial District, where we're partnering with Beam Development and Colas Construction on a multi-block and phase development. And we wanted to also highlight that with the opportunity to work with PHB and the Bureau of Transportation, we will be involved with looking at equitable development opportunities that help to stabilize businesses along 82nd Avenue during PBOT's street construction and as the broader region thinks about future transportation investments in the area, making sure that we are showing up in support of small businesses as they experience construction and also potentially longer term investment by the public sector. Next slide, please. So the next slide transitions into our goal 3, which is around equitable wealth creation. And through a set of tax increment financing, ARPA, and general fund budget allocations, Prosper has the opportunity to provide direct support to small businesses. And that the support can address both pandemic needs and longer term needs that businesses are expressing for them to grow. And we provide that direct support in 2 major ways. One, we provide it through financial programs. We have grant and loan programs, and we also provide it through commercial tenanting opportunities. And you see those 2 categories shown here. We're also showing 2 businesses who have received both funding and direct tenanting opportunities through Prosper Portland. In the upper right is Ladybug Academy. It's a childcare business in North Northeast. And the lower right is Amity, who's a tenant of ours at 10th and Yamhill in partnership with the Office of Transportation. And two key areas that we wanted to highlight is with $4.5 million in ARPA funds, which will go to commercial stabilization grants, we'll be able to support 115 to 295 small businesses over the next 2 years with support. And that can address shortfalls that they're experiencing due to the pandemic, whether that's increased insurance costs or it's rent that they continue to owe to their landlord. We'll be offering grants between $10,000 and $25,000. And depending on the size of grant that ultimately we offer, it will inform the total number of businesses that we can support, which we've shown here. We also want to make sure we found in the past that it's important to complement our grants programs with technical assistance. And so we'll be offering technical assistance consultants who can help businesses with their legal, financial, and real estate needs. They're seeking grant support. Received, I think the mayor mentioned this up front, we received an additional $600,000 in one-time general funds to support our small business repair grant program, which to date has supported almost 200 businesses and been a really popular program as businesses struggle to address needing to fix broken windows or other damage caused by vandalism and attempted theft. And then in TIF districts, we continue to offer our longer term small business grants and loans to help businesses make improvements to new spaces and or as they grow in their existing locations. On the commercial side of the equation, in terms of offering space, we anticipate investing the majority of the ARPA funds that we received for activations and retenanting to continue to support businesses who are looking to move into new space or looking to grow along corridors that are particularly resilient. And the re-tenanting grants would support them moving into that location. And then on the affordable commercial side, we also offer direct tenanting through our affordable commercial pilot projects that we have at Lentz Commons, Alberta Commons, the Nick Fish, and 10th and Yamhill. Next slide, please. Last but not least, we've also found that through the pandemic, we've operated a really strong partnership with partners like PBOT, Venture Portland, and the Old Town Community Association to really respond to the impact of the lack of foot traffic and vacancies on our business districts. Through a portion of our commercial activations and re-tenanting request, we'll continue to support unique experiences and programming on key properties that are owned by Prosper Portland and in partnership with the Bureau of Transportation, and particularly activations that support our BIPOC-owned businesses and community partners. A portion of these funds would also help to fund 2 years of social media promotions of individual businesses and business district events through platforms like Shop Small PDX. And last but not least, we've received $1.5 million in the approved budget for the Office of Film and Events with the goal of having a centralized new office that can help coordinate our work together with offering navigation and direct grants for both large and small events going forward. And this is all in recognition of kind of the economic role that both the events and the film industry play within our community. And with that, I will hand it off to Shay.
Thanks, Lisa. The next slide, please. So building on our strategic plan goal of equitable wealth creation, a number of our priorities this year are an expansion to our inclusive business resource network. Many of you are familiar with the network, the 20+ nonprofit organizations that make up the community practice, and the 1,100+ diverse entrepreneurs that the network serves annually. 75% of those entrepreneurs identify as BIPOC. Within that, 27% identify as Black and African American, 10% Indigenous, 27% Latina, and 12% Asian Pacific Islander. As the IBRN's close sibling program, Prosper's Mercatus Business Directory amplifies the stories of more than 1,000 BIPOC entrepreneurs, and we host signature events such as My People's Market. I think it's worth noting a few of this year's expansions, such as an expansion of the a la carte pool of ad hoc professional services. These are services that are specialized and often complementary to the ongoing support of culturally specific long-term advisors. They could be things such as legal support, tax support, bookkeeping, and scholarship to specific courses. We have several one-time and ongoing allocations for cannabis funds, including the intention to grow our available advising capacity specifically for BIPOC cannabis entrepreneurs, as well as an expansion of our digital marketing program, which has been supporting Mercatus business owners directly with online and social media know-how and micro grants to fund their online pivots. Next slide, please. Moving on to our goal of access to high quality employment, it's important to note this, and it's part of our traded sector work. We support the 4 competitive industries that you see on screen. Those are tech and media, manufacturing, the athletic and outdoor industry, and green cities clusters. We do this to provide inclusive job opportunities, increase business competitiveness, and provide broader financial return to our local economy. The sector staff work on average to create more than 500 new middle wage jobs a year, plus additional business recruitment, expansion, and retention collaborations with partners like Greater Portland, Inc. Part of the goal of this work is also to help traded sector businesses become more inclusive, supporting initiatives like Portland Means Progress, which Director Branham shared led to more than $150 million of intentional spending from larger companies at BIPOC-owned businesses. Our priority ad package from this team comes after a long year of community engagement and partnership with BIPOC leaders in our local tech industry, as well as the Office of Community Technology. You heard testimony yesterday from Edgar Navas, who's been active in that group. Our proposed pilot initiative to scale BIPOC technology firms seeks to support at least 20 founders, specifically in this industry, to grow their sales, navigate barriers, and scale. Lisa noted earlier, this team is also working with national and local experts to bring forward the city's next inclusive economic development strategy. We hope that work will establish the key policies, approaches, partnerships, and investments necessary to achieve inclusive and sustainable economic growth. So moving on to our goal of building 21st century partnerships, there are a number of priority additions that wouldn't be possible without close alignment with community-based economic development and workforce development partners. Many of the funds you see on screen are primarily passed through to the partners that you see, but we find coordination critical given the interconnected nature of economic development in our city. The largest of these allocations is for workforce development. Our partners at Work Systems are looking to build on their first round ARP allocation with another round of providing paid work opportunities and rapid recareering services to Portlanders who have been impacted by the COVID-19 economic crisis. Also included in this is one-time supports to sustain capacity and add current levels of capacity within the 6 neighborhood prosperity network districts, which have played a key role in partnering with many city bureaus around business and household relief, as well as in Old Town, which we know is one of the hardest hit areas of our city, funding to cover the capacity for a district manager that can promote district businesses through marketing, promotion, and events. We're also pleased to see another round of support for our culturally specific chambers. We're excited to continue supporting their capacity building, their ability to provide strategic direction to city initiatives, and retain their staff. Next slide, please. Lastly, we're also pleased to see the proposed allocation for exploring new stabilizing investment areas in East Portland. Over the last few years, Prosper Portland has taken a supportive, co-creative stance around this work, following community's lead and interest around using traditional economic development tools like tax increment finance in new ways. Although the focus for this new exploration is responding to community interest in East Portland, we would hope to approach the work with lessons and innovations taken from several years of co-creation and community capacity building within the Coley community, particularly around issues of governments and how potential investments are made to stabilize communities at risk of displacement. We know the need in East Portland is immense, and the amount of time we have to counteract displacement forces is growing slim. Home prices have more than doubled in the last 10 years in neighborhoods across East Portland, east of I-205, with median sales prices surpassing more than $440,000 in 2021. Median rents have also risen 40% in the last 10 years, despite overall in Portland rents increasing more closely to 25%. The highest increases in East Portland have been for 3-bedroom rentals, with a 50% increase over that same rate. Nearly half of all BIPOC Portlanders live in East Portland, east of 205. For many, systemic racism and discrimination created a disproportionately high vulnerability to displacement pressure. East Portland, is also a place where we have rich cultural assets, diversity, pride in community, and thousands of hardworking, passionate families. I'll just add that we're excited to approach this exploration with community members and partners, particularly with an eye towards including housing and economic opportunity as the area faces more change. I believe that's my last slide, and I want to say thank you, and I'm either pausing or passing it to our finance manager, Tony Barnes.
Okay, I think at this point, we are opening it up for questions.
Colleagues, at this point, does anybody have questions? And if not, Megan, do we have people signed up for public testimony?
No one's on the call.
All right, colleagues, if there are no questions and if nobody is interested in asking any follow-up questions, then we can go ahead and Commissioner Ryan. Welcome, Commissioner Ryan.
Sorry I was late. Hello, everyone. You had a slide up earlier that showed the budget committee for the Prosper Portland. Could you put that one back up again, please? Okay, yeah, the one before. When I look at this, it's a great committee, I'm just wondering if we have enough small business representation on it. How many people represent small businesses on that committee?
You know, Commissioner, I think we have Oscar Arana as one of our Inclusive Business Resource Network technical assistance providers, as well as the interface with the Cully Boulevard Alliance and R42nd. But I think it's a worthwhile question. And, you know, this is something that this is a committee that we have really appreciated because they do tend to advise us year over year, but we're always looking for new members. And I think that's a good flag as we think about participation next year.
I'll work with my network and with you. I do think in the composite of this committee, we're missing those that are living the experience of being a small business owner in Portland in 2022, which is a really challenging thing to do. And I just want to make sure that their voice is at the table going forward. And I know you've been responsive when I've called you about small business concerns. I just think that it would be helpful for us to give that some more attention as we build the budget committee going forward. So,
thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome. And I'll make sure that our office provides a few leads for you if that's helpful.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Maps.
Thank you, and I want to thank everyone for the presentation today. As always, you folks are doing great work. I don't have many substantive questions. Mostly I have some reactions. One request in the presentation, I think you mentioned a study that you commissioned with Eco Northwest. I'd love to get a copy of that. It may be in my email and I missed it, but if it's possible to send a link to that over to my office, I would much appreciate it. And mostly I just have some appreciations and reflections for the work done by Prosper, especially given what we've been through in the last 2 years or so. I think Prosper has just done indispensable work in helping our economy recover, especially small businesses. The longer I stay in this job, the more I see the potential and need for small businesses here in Portland. Over and over again, I see that large businesses are doing just fine. It's the small mom and pops that are really struggling now. And that's also where our opportunities are, especially for wealth generation. So I want to applaud the work that you folks do to help support small BIPOC businesses here in Portland. And over the course of the next year, I look forward to being a thought partner with you to figure out what more we can do in order to help stand up and support our minority-owned small businesses. I'm excited about that, both for equity reasons and for wealth building reasons. You know, if we want to shrink the gap between the economic gap between people of color and the majority of Portlanders, we really have to focus like a laser beam on that wealth gap. And one of the ways we can shrink that is through small businesses. Another way we can do that is through education, but I'm not the education czar. But thanks to our partnership with Prosper, I think we can really make some exciting progress here. And the other thing which I just want to express my excitement about in this year's budget is to see the really creative thinking and visioning and investments in the Office of Events, Film, and Music. I think this is incredibly important. This is part of Portland's brand, and I think part of Portland's future. You know, as we think about the economy of the future here in the City of Roses, I think the creative economy is clearly one of our lanes. The events office, the film office, the music office, however it gets expressed, it's just going to be, I think, the point of the spear there. I really appreciate the way you folks have expanded this and are doing some exciting work. And in general, I'd like to just commend you for all the great work you've done, your partnership to our city. We've never needed you more than we need you now. And I am encouraged and excited to vote yes on what we see before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. All right, thanks for a great presentation, everybody. This meeting of the Prosper Portland Budget Committee is continued to May 18th at 9:45 a.m., where members of the committee will hear any amendments to the budget and the committee will vote on the approval of the budget. Is there anything else that we forgot to do? All right, thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.